Hey friends, thanks so much for joining me today. So today I am working on a summer story that I want to put in a 6x8 album, and it's really quite a long story. So I'm coming up or working on a strategy here to be able to include some of these longer stories in my 6x8 album where it's still kind of very much contained as its own independent story. So I am using the ampersand digital story kit from Ali Edwards Design Inc. And what you're seeing me do right now is just preparing the pages to come up with this little booklet that's going to become a spread in my album. Each of these journaling cards is actually one of the digital journaling cards that I have resized to fit a canvas that is 6.25 inches wide by 8.25 inches tall. I did this work in advance in Photoshop Elements, which is a really user-friendly version of Photoshop and one that I have been using for a really long time for all of my hybrid projects. I also have the photos here, so I really have still always loved these full page big photos that kind of let the imagery shine and tell a different story in a way. So I'm trimming these ones down as well. The photos are also sized to be 6.25 inches wide by 8.25 inches tall, with the exception of the last photo that's going to be going into my little booklet here. That one is sized just a little bit wider at 7 inches wide and 8.25 inches tall. So once I have all of these pieces cut out here, I need to figure out how to put them together. And you're going to see that coming up in just a minute here. Before we jump into that, I'll just give you a little bit of a background about why I wanted to use the ampersand kit for this particular story. So one of the things that we've been doing this summer is trying to do some adventures. Our city, we are very, very lucky to have quite a lot of green space around us, including lots of waterfalls. And so my kids and I decided to make it a little challenge for ourselves to try and find as many waterfalls as we could this summer. Our first one was a huge success, had a great time going out hiking. The second one was not quite. We found the waterfall. That part was good. We saw some beautiful scenery. That part was also great. The part that was not so great was when we managed to get ourselves a little bit lost and pretty far off of the trail that we were supposed to be on, and ultimately had to call my husband to come and pick us up for a ride to drive us back to our car because we were too far out to hike all the way back there again. So anyway, the thought that came to mind as I was thinking about this story, and it was definitely a memorable one with lots of different pieces. I really wanted to capture kind of the whole thing. So this was definitely going to be a longer story, but the words that kept coming to mind for me was how it started and how it's going. And so that was kind of the spark, I guess, that led me to think that the ampersand kit or the and kit might be a really fun one to be able to use to tell this story. So here's the part where I'm going to work on figuring out how to assemble this little booklet. My idea is that I want to make basically a small accordion folded kind of shape to be able to put these pieces together into a booklet, and then that last page, my hope is that I can just go ahead and use a hole punch and pop some holes right into the edge there and slide the whole booklet right into my album. So I've gone through that stash of little scrap pieces of paper over on the right hand side there and found some matte photo paper that was a cutoff from one of my journaling cards. I've got a scoring board and I am just scoring this page. I've trimmed it so that it's the same height as all of those other pages, so it's 8.25 inches tall. I'm using the scoring board and a bone folder, and I have kind of scored lines vertically into this scrap piece of paper. They are 3/4 of an inch wide each. And I didn't really do any measuring for this in advance. All I knew was that I would need to have at least 3 V's to be able to hold the number of pages that I wanted to use, and it just happened to work out perfectly. I don't know, sometimes things just go the way that you need them to, and this was one of those times. But the concept here is to make an accordion fold, and that accordion is actually going to be like the spine of this little booklet that fits inside my album. So I've got all my pages here. I'm just kind of trying to figure out how this is going to work and put them in order back to back so I know what pages are going where. On that front cover photo that I'm working on right now and trying to figure out the title placement, I printed two of the same photos, except that one is zoomed in on the kids just a little bit more. I wasn't sure which style I wanted to include for my project here. Ultimately, I decided that I liked that closer photo of the two of them together there, and that ended up being my cover. So I'm just taking a look to see how all of this is going to fit together. And one of the things I'm thinking about is, do I want that white stripe of a spine to show on the left-hand side of my booklet? Originally, I thought I did, but then when I tested it out here, I wasn't really, I don't know, it felt like it threw the image off center too much, and it just didn't really feel like a good fit for this particular one. So I decided that I want the seam or that binding edge there to be hidden underneath the photo. So I've used my adhesive roller and put a good strip of adhesive just down the first ridge of that little accordion. And now I'm going ahead and using the adhesive roller again so that I can put my cover photo right on top of that, and then it'll be backed by my first journaling spot that begins this story of this waterfall adventure or misadventure that was definitely definitely memorable for my kids. I'm just trimming up the edges here to get rid of the excess that kind of overlaps behind the photo. And now I've got that accordion folded out again. On the next wedge, I'm running another strip of adhesive, putting in the photo that's going to go into that spot, and then just sealing it down. And I can see already that this is coming together really well. This was a super easy way to bind these pages together, and it seems to be, I would say, not too thick at this point, which I'm really happy with. So here goes the next journaling card, and we'll just continue assembling these pieces together. In addition to those big photos that I've got on each spread, I had quite a few others that I wanted to be able to include in this little booklet here. And I just like the idea of having a bit of visual variety. And so I went ahead and printed some of those extra photos with my Instax printer. The other thing that I'm doing is I don't really need a lot of embellishments for this story. I really just kind of want to be able to focus on the words more so, the words in the photos, but just something, just a little something is always nice to be able to add to my project. So I've got this wood veneer set from the travel collection that was released in 2021, and some of the words on there are just perfect. So on that last page there, I found a wood veneer piece like right out of the bag that said lead the way, and it was a photo of all of us heading out to get our little hike started. On the second one, I'm playing with a couple of different ideas here, but ultimately I pick this wood veneer piece that just says wander, and I'm attaching that to the photo of the waterfall that we found there too. So doesn't need any serious embellishment here. It doesn't. I'm not really hoping to add a ton to it, but just having a little something extra is pretty great. I've got this last two Instax photos that I'm adding into this page as well. One of my son at the end of our hike while we're waiting for my husband to come pick us up, and one of my daughter as well. My only regret, well, I wouldn't really say regret, the one thing that I probably would have done differently if I had the physical ampersand kit in my hands here is I probably would have actually used like a chipboard ampersand to connect these two pictures instead of the wood veneer at the end, just because it's kind of like a part of that story. It's like him and her, and that would have been a fun addition, but I didn't really think of that at the time that I was working on my project, and I'm still waiting for my physical kit to arrive in the mail. So there's lots of stuff you can do with the digital kits for sure in a hybrid setup, but sometimes I really just like those physical embellishments to be able to add into my projects. On this last page here, I am playing around a little bit. I've got just like the last few words or details of this story, and I had printed it onto a 3x4 journaling card to be able to add on to this last photo. And as I'm putting these pieces together, I'm not 100% in love with the way that the Instax photo is pairing with this journaling card, but the words are still important. So playing around just a little bit and trying to figure out how I want to make this work. Ultimately, it comes together and everything is just fine. But this is kind of just that trial and error part of the process. So at this point, the main components of my little booklet here are very much assembled, and the accordion itself is pretty sturdy, but I decided to go ahead and add just a little bit of washi tape to that outside edge, partly just to clean up the spine a little bit there, but also just an extra layer to really keep everything nice and secure there. So yeah, just a nice wide piece of washi tape that I folded over the spine just to kind of keep everything together. Like I said, it was actually pretty sturdy without the washi tape even, but I just felt better having that extra little bit to stabilize it all. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Definitely, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below.